Welcome into Scoop and Score. My name's Tanner, and before we get started, just wanted to get a few housekeeping things out of the way. I know there was no podcast this week, so my apologies for that. It's both deer and bird season here in Ohio, and I'm training a new puppy, so I took a couple days to hunt. Training a new puppy for birds, that is. Took a couple days to get to hunt this weekend, so didn't get a podcast out on Monday, so apologies for that. To make up for that, I'm thinking about doing a live stream reacting to the games live on Saturday night, so let me know if you'd be interested in that. But anyway, all the housekeeping out of the way, just wanted to get that out there. Let's go ahead and jump into number 20 Texas at number 11 Oklahoma State. This game's going to be Saturday, October the 22nd at 3:30 on ABC. Let's go ahead and jump into the numbers for this one. I also wanted to switch up a little bit how I do my videos. Instead of just reading off the statistics, the raw statistics I put on the screen and doing it basically like a PowerPoint, I wanted to jump a little bit into my model and my per play statistics that I keep track of. And I just want to give a little disclaimer. If you're familiar with the College Football Nerds channel, it's going to sound like I'm copying them a lot. And I don't mean to, but their way of adjusting statistics, I followed them for quite a few years. And their way of adjusting statistics in terms of like percentage of opponent averages, I think is probably the best way to make up for like playing bad competition or to adjust for playing bad competition. So I'm also going to use percentage-based yards per play or percentage of opponent averages. So if it sounds like I'm copying them, I don't mean to, but they do put out a really good videos. So if it does sound like I'm copying them, I guess I'm kind of doing something right, at least in my opinion. So anyway, with that caveat out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into the numbers for this one. Texas raw statistics on the screen for you. They're averaging 4.87 yards per carry, 8.76 yards per attempt, and 6.71 yards per play. And Oklahoma State is giving up 3.84 yards per carry, which sounds decent on paper, but they haven't played any great rushing attacks, so that is 103% of opponent averages. Oklahoma State is giving up 7.95 yards per passing attempt, which isn't great on paper, and that's also good for 121% of opponent averages. We'll get into a little bit when I get into my predictions, but I think the Oklahoma State secondary and pass defense is going to cost them pretty drastically in this game. I think Quinn Ewers in Texas is probably going to light them up a little bit, but we'll get into that a little more when I get into my predictions. And then Oklahoma State is giving up 5.95 yards per play, which is good for 114% of opponent averages. That's also not a great number. So players to watch for the Texas offense would be Quinn Ewers, obviously. Bijan Robinson, who's fallen a little bit, I think, on people's national radar. Bijan came into the season as a dark horse Heisman contender. I think he's fallen a little bit since then, but I don't see him on any Heisman list right now. But he's certainly, in my opinion, still the best running back in the country, even over Blake Corum and Travion Henderson, Mayan Williams, and Ohio State and Michigan. And then another player to watch for Texas is obviously Xavier Worthy, one of the most explosive players in America. Every time he touches the ball, it could go for a touchdown. It doesn't matter if it's a jet sweep or a little slant route over the middle or a go route. Anytime Xavier Worthy touches the ball, it's a hold your breath moment. It could go for 6. Anyway, I think the Texas offense against the Oklahoma State defense is probably going to be the matchup that decides this game, in my opinion. If you were wondering about the impact of Jim Knowles at Oklahoma State has gone from one of the best defenses in the country last year under Jim Knowles to one of the worst defenses statistically this year. And meanwhile, Ohio State's gone from a mediocre to bad defense last year, and then under 1 year under Jim Knowles, they're a top 10 defense in almost every major statistic. I think the secondary play in particular for Oklahoma State has gone downhill pretty quickly, and that shows because that was Jim Knowles' specialty, or it is Jim Knowles' specialty on defense, is the secondary, in particular the safeties, and those have looked pretty rough for Oklahoma State so far this year. And I think Quinn Ewers is going to expose them Quinn Ewers and Xavier Worthy both are going to expose them pretty heavily in this game, at least in my opinion. So before Oklahoma State fans get too mad at me, let's talk about a little bit of positive and switch to the Oklahoma State offense versus the Texas defense. Again, raw statistics on the screen for you. Oklahoma State is averaging 3.72 yards per carry, 7.48 yards per attempt, which is a pretty good number, and 5.57 yards per play. And Texas defense gives up 3.41 yards per carry, which is good for 79% of their opponent averages. Oklahoma State is giving up 6 yards per passing attempt. Texas is giving up 6 yards per passing attempt, which is good for 82% of their opponent averages. And Texas is giving up 4.75 yards per play, which is good for 81% of their opponent averages. So players to watch for Oklahoma State are going to be Spencer Sanders, which is the quarterback. If he can play, there's been a lot of rumors circulating on that one, whether or not he's going to play. Mike Gundy won't show his hand on whether or not he's going to play. Don't blame the head coach for that. I wouldn't either. But if he can play, definitely going to be the player to watch for Oklahoma State. And then two more are the receivers, Braden Johnson and Brendan Presley. They're two top receivers. I think if Oklahoma State's going to have success in this game, it's going to come through the air through those three players, in my opinion. So those are going to be the three players to watch for me for Oklahoma State. And then to get into the predictions for this one, Vegas has this game at Texas -6 over under 60.5. We'll get into my thoughts on that. So first, I just wanted to talk about how can Oklahoma State pull the upset. And in my opinion, Oklahoma State has to get an early lead in this one, preferably probably a 2-touchdown lead in this one, at least 2 possessions, and get the crowd into it. If they don't do that, if Oklahoma State falls behind early, I think they're in trouble because I don't really trust their defense to get stops. And if you can't get stops, you can't catch up. It's pretty simple. I think Spencer Sanders has to have a pretty good game in this one. And I think if Oklahoma State's going to win this game, I think they're going to have to win it in a track meet. Again, I don't trust their defense to get too many stops, so I think they're going to have... It sounds trivial when you say it because obviously the team that scores more points wins, but if you follow football, you get what I mean. I think they're going to have to outscore Texas and win this game in a shootout style game. Again, because I don't trust them to get stops reliably. So anyway, to jump into the model, the model has Texas gaining 495 yards at 5 yards per carry, 10.6 yards per attempt. So it has Texas lighten Oklahoma State up through the air and 7.7 yards per play, scoring 38 points. And it has Oklahoma State at 357 yards, 2.9 yards per carry, 6.1 yards per attempt, and 4.5 yards per play, and scoring 33. Has the final score of this game 38-33. And one thing that I think is kind of interesting, before we get to my predictions, I'll allude to it a little bit. I think that Texas's overall yardage and yards per play statistics, or at least projections, are a little bit inflated for this game. I don't think they're quite going to hit those numbers. 10.6 yards per attempt honestly wouldn't surprise me, but I don't think they'll quite be at 7.7 yards per play. And then for Oklahoma State, I think their numbers are a little undersold. I think they'll be a little bit more than 4.5 yards per play because that's barely moving the ball. But I just thought that was interesting because I have the score being worse to me. I have the score at 38-24. I think Oklahoma State's going to get more than 357 total yards, but I just don't see them putting up the points in this game. Again, if Spencer Sanders isn't 100%, which I kind of don't think he will be, I just don't see Oklahoma State putting up the points, or they're going to have a hard time moving the ball against a pretty good Texas defense. If Spencer Sanders isn't 100%, and even if he was 100%, I still think Oklahoma State, I just don't like the matchup for them. Texas has a good pass rush, they're a decent secondary, and overall they're just a good pass defense. And I wouldn't say Oklahoma State's pass happy, but they rely on their pass game for the majority of their yardage. So yeah, that being said, I'm going to take Texas 38-24 in this one. That might... I'm probably drinking a little bit too much of the Texas Kool-Aid, and this is probably going to make me look like an idiot, but that's just my gut take on the game. Again, if I was going to bet on this game, if you were looking for betting advice, I would listen to the model. The model tends to be right. I think we're 94-70 against the spread right now, so the model tends to be right. If you're looking for betting advice, take the model advice, don't take my advice. But all that being said, thanks for watching. Go ahead and leave me a like if you enjoyed the video. Go ahead and subscribe for future videos if you enjoyed the video. If you didn't like it, let me know what I can change. Let me know what I can fix. And watch out for tomorrow. I'm going to be putting out a UCLA versus Oregon preview. Again, thanks for watching. Peace.